didn't do no weighing myself.
I've been out there. I don't know.
And those ground don't give down when you hit it.
No,
No, sir.
they don't. They sure don't. So if you're like me, you bounce, so.
It's not so much I bounce, it's just like when I landed, it just, I stayed put for a while.
Oh, I bounced where I got up, and then I looked around, see if anybody seen me.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to Gospel Mission Baptist Church on this Wednesday evening. For some reason, I am perspiring. I don't think I'm sick. I think I'm fine. But I think it's just been humid enough outside that, so I'll keep wiping sweat and we'll get through this evening, all right? Okay, announcements. This coming Sunday is Father's Day. I got my Father's Day gift today. Father's Day / birthday gift. I'm happy with it. And we will be having donuts with Dad starting at 9 o'clock down in the fellowship hall. Gentlemen, bring your family and meet me in the fellowship hall. We'll have coffee and donuts. Do y'all want orange juice to go with that? Yes. Milk? Some drink milk? Milk will be all right with donuts. Okay. And what? And coffee. Got it. Whew, getting complicated. Miss Betty's going to be out of town, so I got to get the groceries. We'll have what we have. No, we'll have coffee, and we'll have milk, and we'll have orange juice, and we'll have donuts. I'm going to get a bunch of donuts. I like donuts. All right. Now, coming up the 21st, that's Vacation Bible School, and a little bit of stuff starting to come in. We're going to have a little more stuff come in, and then we're going to have a lot of stuff come in, and then we're going to have youngins come in. We're going to have us a big day that day. Studying the life of Paul, we're calling it Under Construction. So y'all make plans for that. Do be praying about it. And we will meet on the 21st for Vacation Bible School. All righty, prayer requests. Let's start out tonight by just saying we need to pray for our country. I thought things would get better, but I think things are getting worse. And they're talking by this weekend that they may be protests from coast to coast. And so the last I heard, troops are out in Los Angeles, but troops are out in I want to say San Antonio, Texas. It could be Austin, Texas. There was an A in there somewhere, but troops are out in a town in Texas as well. Who knows? I grew up in the late 60s, mid-60s, late 60s, when they had the riots down in Winston-Salem. That's when my dad bought a police scanner so he could listen to everything that was going on in Winston-Salem. That was the time. I don't know that we're that bad yet, but just pray for your country. Pray for those that are in leadership, that they would exercise wisdom. Pray for those that are stirring up trouble, that the truth would come out. Pray for your country. Pray for your church as well, especially with Vacation Bible School coming up. Nobody is allowed to get sick or hurt or any such thing. So, and me too, yeah. So we're going to need all hands on deck for Bible school. Pray for your church. Continue to pray for Debbie and Vicky's mom and her health issues. Pray for Miss Vicky. She is not with us tonight. Continue to pray for Miss Carolyn, for Tony and Amy, and the whole family there. Pray particularly for Melissa and the pain that she's experiencing. But back to Miss Carolyn, pray for her. Pray that she'll get some strength back, get some hearing back. Maybe get some hearing aids that will help her so that she can come back to church. Pray for Miss Carolyn. Pray for the family. Pray for Denise, Brother Joe's daughter. Pray for Dale as well.
Denise has been having a lot of trouble with her legs. And some days she can't even walk. Bothers her so bad. And she's got go back a generation, I guess what you call it, in her eyes.
Yeah.
She said they was getting worse too, so didn't know how much longer she'd be able to drive. But anyway, so
Pray for Denise.
yeah, they'll go been going down there once in a while and help her with their housework and stuff.
Yeah.
They'll pray for her.
Pray for Denise. Pray for Dale and pray for Robert as well. Continue to pray for Charlie and Aya. Pray for Caleb Holt, young man recovering from surgery. Pray for Richard's nephew, Samuel. As of Sunday, he was in the hospital. I haven't heard any update, but pray for Samuel. If he's just getting out of the hospital, he still needs prayer. And want to ask you to pray for a preacher friend of mine. He's the man who led my son Daniel to the Lord. Daniel grew up in a Christian home, grew up going to church, but he was lost. And when he got under conviction, he sought this man out and he led him to the Lord. But this fella has always loved riding motorcycles. Jerry, you can appreciate that. He had a motorcycle before he had his driver's license. When he was in the military, he rode a motorcycle. And now he's older than me by a few years, and he's still riding motorcycles. And he got him a new one, got him a big one. And he got it particularly so his wife can ride on it with him. It's a Harley, and it's a pretty one. But he said she was on it with him, and he stopped, put his foot down, and it just went on down. That bike fell, scared his wife. So the next time they stopped, she was going to help him. So as the bike kind of leaned, she leaned the other way, threw it off balance, and they went down again. So she's refusing to ride with him, and he said that's the reason he got the motorcycle. And he said, if the Lord wants me to give it up, I will, but I don't want to give up riding my motorcycle. So if you would pray for the motorcycle riding preacher, all right? My brother and I, we tried to give him encouragement. My brother was talking about, well, brother, you just have to be willing and maybe God won't make you. And I said, no, God's giving you some sermons right here. Do you know what kind of a sermon illustration that is when you fall down and you get back up? And he started laughing then. He said, it's harder to get back up than it is to fall. And I said, yes, it is. He said, well, that's my second point. So we had a good time, but pray for him. You could tell it was discouraging him. All righty. Other prayer requests tonight.
That's my next door neighbor, Steve. He found me last week. He's having some trouble. One of his arms is swelling up real bad. And he called me today. He'd taken his wife to get CAT scan, and he said he sat in the vehicle waiting for her to come back. So he called me. I said, well, you got anything about your arm yet? He said, no. Said, I asked the doctor if they'd give me some fluid medicine. They told me I'm going to Mercy River. He said, he didn't know. He said, I guess I'm going to wind up going to Mercy River because the doctor told me he didn't know what was causing it. So,
There's more and more going on the doctors just don't know.
yeah,
Well-
the doctor told me one time, he operated on my hand and arm. He says, I can open you up, sew it up, but he said, the Lord has to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I can't go no further and just cut you.
Yeah. Aren't you glad God heals? Pray for Brother Joe's neighbor, Steve. Other prayer requests tonight. Yes, sir, Johnny.
Remember the Gene Mahler family? Her funeral's Friday. And right now, Mom says, she got her cortisone shot yesterday. So she's hoping that they're just going to have a graveside service.
Mm-hmm.
So she's hoping that she might be able to go to that. But I'll have to get her some kind of chair.
Yeah. Well, I hope she gets to go. I know that'd mean a lot to her. Pray for the Gene Mahler family. Anyone else tonight? Yes, sir, brother. Pray for Michael Special. Pray for Miss Betty. She's headed to the mountains tomorrow, and she's taking 2 grandchildren with her. Woo! Pray that it'll be a good, safe trip. She can take care of her mama.
And along those same lines, my sister that lives with my mother is going on vacation Saturday for a week. She needs it. Just pray the Lord just help get some rest. And my oldest sister's coming to stay with my mother while Terry's gone, and she has health issues, and her husband has health issues. So if you just pray that they have a good week next week.
Yeah. I picked on her sister for years. I kept telling her, you're the older one. I was born in June. You were born in July. And if you say it fast enough, she never picked up on it. But she finally did. But I had it going for a while. Any other prayer requests? For those of you who didn't hear it, a loving wife requested prayer for her husband because he's going to go get his brain checked. Pray for Michael. He's got an appointment with a neurologist in August. Who is supposed to? James. Continue to pray for James. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I don't mean to go to the end, please forgive me, but I really like to remember me for Bible school. That I say what I'm supposed to say, not what I want to say. I pray that God will touch me and help me and lead me, because I don't want to hurt no one, especially with the scripture. That bothers me to no end, hurt someone.
Well, you just have to be downright mean with these. If you hurt anybody, you'll be fine, brother, but I'll pray for you. All right. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Remember these requests. Pray for one another. Pray for our church. Pray for our country. Brother Johnny, lead us, would you?
Thank you, Lord, for this time and opportunity and privilege just to come worship you, our brothers and sisters in Christ. Thank you, Lord, that we still enjoy the freedom that we can come and worship you. Pray, Lord, we not take it for granted. Pray, Lord, for all these many, many requests. You know each and every heart, each and every burden. We just lift them up, put them in your hands. Pray that your will be done. We pray for the families that's lost loved ones, Lord. You'll just give comfort and grace as only you can. Pray, Lord, that someone might be saved that doesn't know you, Lord, and they'll reach out and call upon your precious holy name. Pray, Lord, for our country and the leaders and the decisions that are being made. Pray, Lord, that you'll forgive us as a country for saying that we don't need you and we're turning our backs on you, Lord. We need you now more than ever, Lord. Pray, Lord, that you'll open people's eyes, Lord, to call out to you and just put their faith and trust in you once again, Lord. Pray, Lord, for our church, that you'll keep your hand upon it, Lord. Pray that we be a shining light and a blessing to the ones that come in contact with it, Lord. Pray for our children, that we be the example that they need in their lives, Lord, that we always point them to you and show them that Jesus does love us. Thank you, Lord, for all your many blessings. We pray for Brother Forrest as he stands tonight, just giving the words to speak. Pray, Lord, you open our hearts and our minds to receive your word so we can carry it with us to the remainder of the week. We just want to thank you and praise you and ask everything in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
All right, if you got your Bibles, we are continuing our study of the life of Christ. We are getting down to, well, we are at Crucifixion Day, but we're going to be studying right before the crucifixion tonight. Last week we said that the trials before the Jews convicted Jesus. They convicted him, but they wanted Jesus condemned. The Jewish form of capital punishment was stoning, but the Bible had foretold that the Messiah would be crucified, and that was a Roman form of punishment, capital punishment. That wasn't their reason. They were an occupied nation, Israel was, and the Pharisees really didn't have the authority to kill a man. So they convicted him, but they had to take him to the Romans to be condemned, and that's what they did. Matthew chapter 27, we'll start there tonight. This story, well, all of this is very familiar to all of us, I'm sure. But verse number 3, this is sometime after the trials, about daybreak, somewhere around in there, the sun's coming up. Verse 3 says, Then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself, and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. So after Jesus is convicted, Judas tries to give back the money. A little late, isn't it? Verse 4, he said this, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to that. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. Now, another place said that his bowels burst asunder. The two of those things together sounds like he hung himself at the top of a cliff, and the rope broke and he fell down the cliff and busted open. Anyway, he died. Judas died. He committed suicide. Now, cast down the money in the temple. Verse number 6. The chief priests took the silver pieces and said, listen to this, It is not lawful for to put them in the treasury, because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with it the potter's field to bury strangers in. Wherefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, And they took 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord appointed me. Well, the prophecy here mentions in Jeremiah. It's not as clear in Jeremiah as it is in Zechariah. Zechariah 11:13, and they pretty much quoted word for word here. I think it's interesting, though, back up to note, the Pharisees didn't have any problem at all paying Judas out of the treasury, but they had a problem with taking that money and putting it back in the treasury. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting how we kind of justify our own actions in the same way? We'll take it and, well, I can't do that because that's wrong, but I can do it this way. I pick at my pastor. He walked up one Sunday morning, and I was out in the hallway, and I was talking to my brother, and I was talking to another fellow, and I was in the midst of telling one of my tall tales, one of my big stories, and I was right in the middle of it. And he was standing there just kind of looking at me. And I said, "Oh, preacher, don't worry. There's enough truth in here, I don't feel like I'm lying." And he just kind of smiled and walked on away. But, this is the same thing that they did here. They held on to enough truth that they felt justified, but how much more wicked is it to give money for someone to be betrayed than to take back money and put it in the treasury for someone who has been betrayed? Why did they not just turn Jesus loose? Then the money would have been clean, right? Well, no, that's not the point. The point was they wanted Jesus dead, and they were going to do anything they could to do that. They needed a time and a place where Jesus was apart from the people, because if they'd went out in force, the chiefs, the elders and the scribes and the Pharisees, if they went out in force and took Jesus in front of the people, they would have caused a riot. So they couldn't do that. They needed a quiet place. That's what they paid for. This is what they got. Well, as I mentioned already, we're going to go down to Pilate now. We're in the early hours. The sun's probably up, but not too high, and things are starting to happen. A lot happens, and Jesus winds up on the cross probably about 9 o'clock that morning. So all of this has to happen before 9 o'clock. Luke chapter 23. Verse number 2. And they began to accuse him. Well, verse 1 says they led him to Pilate. Verse 2 says they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." So Jesus was delivered to the Roman authorities, but what he was accused of from the Jews when they were questioning him was heresy. He claimed to be the Son of God, and that was heresy. That's not, no man can make those claims. He claimed to be able to forgive sin. No man can make those claims. And so that's what they convicted him of in their trial. But when they bring him now before the Romans don't care about what he believes according to the Jewish law. So what do they say? They said that he's perverting the nation, forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, claiming that he is the king. They charged him with sedition, or trying to overthrow the government. That got the Romans' attention. He's trying to overthrow our rule. Now, Rome, Italy, is a kind of a far piece away from Jerusalem, from Galilee. If they wanted to move a large number of troops, they marched across the land, and that's a long walk. If they needed to move troops quickly, they did it by ship, and that still took a while. So they had a garrison there, they had troops there, they had governors there, but the Jews were always a tumultuous group. They were always kind of just on the edge. And the Romans really didn't want to strike with a lot of force. So the rulers were trying to play this game back and forth about what they could do to keep everybody in line, back and forth. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Maybe that's what's going on, I don't know. So here's this man, Jesus, brought before them, trying to overthrow the government. Verse number 3, Pilate asked him, saying, "Art thou the king of the Jews?" That's going straight to the heart of the matter. Look what Jesus said. He answered him and said, "Thou sayest it." Then said Pilate to the chief priest and to the people, "I find no fault in this man." It didn't take him long to realize that they were stirring up something against Jesus that was absolutely false. Yes, if they had accepted him as Messiah, the Roman government would have fallen. But he did not come at this time to be the conquering king. He would have accepted that role if they had accepted him as king. He came, though, as a lowly servant, demonstrating what everyone who claimed the name of God, all of the Jewish people, that's what they should have been, a lowly servant. And folks, that's what you and I need to be as well, a lowly servant. Our King is coming. He will come, and I believe it's soon. And when he comes, we'll line up on his side. But today, right here, he's not said for us to gather an army. He said for us to love one another, to share the message that he came to seek and to save that which was lost, that same message that saved you and me. That's our job, to spread that message. There's no fighting in that, is there? Now, once we get saved, I am certain that the Lord will convict each of us of certain standards of conduct that we ought to adhere to. And shame on you if you don't. But because I have a conviction about certain forms of dress and so on and so forth, I can't make you do that unless there's Scripture. If there's Scripture, I'm going to preach it. If it's my opinion, I'm going to put great big quotation marks around it and let you know that to begin with. Too much gets preached outside of the Bible. Isn't that sad? There's plenty to preach in the book. All right. Well, Pilate knew the Pharisees had a weak case. Why didn't he just go ahead and dismiss everything right then? Well, verse 5, they were more fierce, saying, He stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. And when he heard the word Galilee, a little bell went off with Pilate. Verse 6, when Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who also was at Jerusalem at this time. That is a politician's move. Hey, you're under his governance. Let's just go ahead and send you to Herod. Whew. Got out of that sticky one, didn't I? Verse 8, when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him a long time, a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. By the way, this Herod is the same Herod who had John the Baptist arrested and beheaded. Same man. And now Jesus is standing before him as his forerunner had stood before him. And what Herod wanted to see miracles. He wanted to show. As all of this stuff that I've heard, is this really true? Come on, I want you to, how about if I bring some water pots out? Can you change water into wine? I heard you did that. Well, how about, I got this ache in my back. Can you heal me? Put on a show for me. Did Jesus perform for Herod? Nope, he didn't. So let me ask you this. Why should God perform for us today?
What did Jesus say about Herod? You're telling old fox, I do cures today and tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep. There are those who will draw a big crowd because of the healing services and all of this stuff, being slain in the Spirit. That's the one that just tickles me. You watch that and they'll smack somebody in the forehead and they'll just fall backwards. If you smack me in the forehead, I probably would too. I don't know. God can and does perform miracles. Yes, he does. But God's not here to put on a show for any man. If you come expecting a show, you will be disappointed. If you come expecting still small voice, that's what Elijah wasn't expecting either. Just a still small voice. You may just find God. Well, Jesus wouldn't perform, but Herod's soldiers mocked him. I think it's interesting, verse number 12, the same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. Jesus brought two scoundrels together, made friends out of them because they found somebody together that they could hate. Pilate didn't like being drawn into this controversy. He had to deal with these difficult people, and this Jesus just made it more difficult. Herod didn't like being passed over. Herod wanted to see, and Jesus wouldn't show him. So they both hated Jesus, and they both bonded together over that hatred. So, there's another fellow that gets mixed into all of this, kind of by accident. Verse 13, Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, Ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverteth the people. And behold, I, having examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him. Nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. That is Pilate's decision on the matter. Verse 16, to make you happy, I'll beat the daylights out of him. That's what it says. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. Now, a little backstory here. The Scriptures had said that the Messiah would come. The Scriptures had laid out a timetable of when the Messiah would come. By the way, Jesus fulfilled all of those prophecies. But you know, the devil has a way of whenever it becomes obvious that God is working, the devil always tries to throw in a counterfeit. Y'all are wise enough to know that, right? Beware of any man that steps on the scene and says, I have the answers to everything. Beware, he's a counterfeit. Because God is working right now, even in all the craziness that's going on. God is at work. God is giving mankind exactly what mankind wanted. They threw God out of their lives, and they're reaping what they have sown. When I was in school, the teacher started out every day reading from the Bible. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We sang hymns to start the day. I'm not talking like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. I can remember singing Amazing Grace. And then they passed that law that took the Bible out of school. That was the very reason that public schools were founded in this country, was so that people could read the Bible. And we threw God out of public schools. And now we've thrown God out of pretty much everything. I'm going to say it. Forgive me. No, just pray for me. Even the institution of marriage that God instituted right at the very beginning, mankind is in his arrogance is redefining it to be whatever they want it to be. The Bible says that God created them male and female. My counting's not the world's greatest, but that's 2. We got how many now? Whatever you want to be. Just because you try paint stripes on a cow doesn't make him a zebra. He's not going to run any faster, right? Just saying. Mankind in his arrogance has thrown God out of everything. And this is the result. If God is not the authority anymore, then whatever I feel is just as has just as much weight as what you think. Facts, yeah, that's just your opinion. We can all do whatever we want to. Well, I got off, chased that rabbit. I believe he run up in a hole now, so we'll go on back to what we were talking about. Whenever God is working, the devil always throws a counterfeit out there to distract. Jesus was coming on the scene. It was marked down. It was as plain as it could be. Hundreds of prophecies pointing right here. And Jesus fulfilled every one of them. Surely some Bible scholar somewhere in that day would have fallen across that, don't you think? They did. But surely if God's working like that, then the devil's going to throw a counterfeit. There were lots of people who popped up and claimed that they were the Messiah. In my study, I came across something interesting. You know what Barabbas means? It means son of the Father. That sounds like Son of God, doesn't it? Sounds like Messiah. They speculate that Barabbas was a leader of one of these groups that was going to overthrow the government. Barabbas was actually guilty of what they were accusing Jesus of before the Romans, trying to incite a riot and overthrow the government. Son of the Father, God's man for the hour, Barabbas. Can't you hear the speeches? Well, Pilate tries to avoid condemning Jesus. He said, I'll just beat him and then I'll let him go. I got to let somebody go anyway. I'll let Jesus go. He's innocent. If a person is innocent, it is the leaders, the officials' responsibility to declare him innocent and protect him from harm. Amen? Don't get your hopes up. Didn't happen here, did it? Well, verse 16 says, I will therefore chastise him and release him, for of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. The Pharisees had prepared for this. They cried out all at once, saying, Away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them. But they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. The mob. Man, I do feel like I'm reading out of the headlines. The mob. This is what happens when a mob takes over. It just takes a small handful to incite a large crowd. The Pharisees, chief priests, were a small group in this large group. But all the people started crying out, Crucify him, crucify him. You can see one of them little guys running around in the back. You know, you can get it started over here, and you can go over there and get it started over there. The same thing. And the whole crowd picks it up. Verse 22, he said unto them the third time, Why, what evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. And he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired. But he delivered Jesus to their will. Now, just to show you how terrible it really was, turn to John chapter 19. You know, the Pharisees didn't like the idea that they had to pay tribute to Caesar. They tried to catch Jesus and his disciples in a trap like that. They asked Peter, Doesn't your master pay tribute to Caesar? And Peter, well, of course. And then they had to go get some money to pay their money. But Pharisees, the chief priests, they didn't want Roman rule, but they hated Jesus even more. Look at verse number 15. But they cried out, Away with him, crucify him. Pilate said, Therefore, shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. Compromised everything at that point. They reject Jesus. They embrace Caesar. In another place, we won't turn there, but they said, oh, Pilate, you don't have to worry. His blood's not on your hands. It's on our hands and our children's hands. And the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, have paid for that blood for generations, some 2,000 years. Be careful. Oh, be careful. They got what they wanted at the time, but it cost them a lot more than they wanted to pay. Oh, so much more than they wanted to pay. They rejected their king. They rejected the one that was sent from God for their salvation. And aren't you glad that God turned to the Gentiles? The gospel was preached and started coming our way. And somewhere back in my ancestry, the gospel was preached. Some of my ancestors, for the sake of being able to worship the way they wanted to, they got on a boat and sailed out across the sea, risked life and everything just to come to another land and try and make a go of it. And here we are today. Aren't we squandering everything that God has given us? For what? For what we want. Now, behold, what a price we are going to pay. Okay, that's enough politics. Everybody got all your blanks filled in? Yes, sir.
Amazing that Pharisees and all seen that money they paid Jesus was blood money.
Yeah. They're the ones who made it bloody.
Yeah. See, it was, when I studied that the other week, I was teaching them Matthew, and I was studying all that stuff.
Yeah.
They saw, and they condemned the money because it was the blood money of a man that cost his life. But yet, I said, we don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they paid it, and it was they were the ones that paid for that. So
Yeah.
I was reading. Have you ever read Josephus' book on Pilate?
I have not.
You know, Pilate washed his hands. See, he was innocent. That blood.
Mm-hmm.
He said that Pilate lost his mind. And so they see him, last time I see him, said he's still rubbing his hands trying to get that off.
Probably so. Johnny, you needed a blank filled in.
I actually got two.
Okay.
The first one is first part of Judas, the potter's field.
Oh, I didn't touch on that, did I? The potter's field, that's where clay had been extracted. So the land was basically worthless. It had been all dug up. And they figured it wasn't worth Jews being buried there, so we'll bury all the strangers there. What's the other one?
And the last one, the Pharisees have blank for this. Next to the last one.
Oh, the Pharisees had prepared for this. I'm glad I asked.
They still call them graveyards around the prisons where they die in prison, but nobody claimed about it. They still call those graveyards potter's fields.
Yep. Refers right back to this. So much of our talk, our traditions come right out of the Bible. And when we studied the Bible when we were growing up, you kind of understood where all that came from. And you don't really understand anymore because we don't study the Bible. This was the second George Bush was in office, and he made a statement about being a good Samaritan. And the press just were astounded. I've never heard that. Where does that come from? They had no idea where that came from or what it meant. I think he did, but the press didn't.
What I heard that his daddy said that he read the Bible every morning and prayed before he went to
Yeah.
But I mean, whatever that meant.
Yeah. Pray that our leaders, all of them, from California to New York to Florida to Washington State, that they'd all have some sense. All right, any other questions? Okay. Brother Michael, dismiss us, would you?
Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for another opportunity, Lord. Lord, thank you for the Bible study tonight, Lord. Thank you for the one who brought it, Lord. Thank you for providing the word, Lord. And Lord, I ask you